Hey everyone, welcome to This Week in People. As always, This Week in People is supported by my friends at PIN, the internal communications platform for the distributed workforce. And like every episode, all of the articles I'm going to walk you through, the full links are included in the show notes, so be sure to check those out and go a little deeper. Let's dig in. So first, I'm really excited to unveil something that I've been thinking about for quite some time now. This is a first look at the new Amplify Job Board. And yes, there are lots of job boards out there. What is probably a little different about the Amplify Job Board is that you have to include your compensation range for your jobs to be posted here. This is entirely focused on modern people jobs, and one of the qualifiers to be able to add your job is to include your comp range. I'm a firm believer in that transparency externally from a recruiting perspective and a candidate experience perspective. I think everybody wins, and so I've always been a big proponent of that. And so as I began thinking about creating a job board, it was important to me that that extended through the job board platform. So you had the opportunity to post direct jobs. Even I'm actually allowing executive search firms, since most chief people officer jobs these days are being run by executive search firms, you too can post on this job board, but you are required to include the company name, obviously, and the compensation range. So if you're looking for a little extra juice, I'm going to be promoting these jobs on a regular basis. You also have the ability to sponsor jobs here, which will include some extra social love, some tweet shares, and specifically sharing this in a HR leader community that I manage. You have the opportunity to do that here. So check it out. You can see the link in the show notes, and this will be linked to the new Amplify brand platform that I'll be mentioning at the end of the show. So digging into the articles this week, here's one from CNBC that really resonated with my networking community, and I imagine if you work in or anywhere near HR, it probably resonates with you. It gets into some of the interviews and just different aspects of the unique and acute toll the last 18 months have taken on the field of HR and people ops. And we're not done. We're now kind of in this moment where we're at this kind of convergence of, Delta and the uncertainty there with school reopening. And for those of us in the US, lots of politicization of masks that we're also encountering in our schools with children that can't be vaccinated. So we're going to see how this continues to play out, but unfortunately, HR is still at the center of all of these things. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's a great opportunity for us, obviously, to step up and show our impact to the business, but it's also exhausting, and burnout levels are at a place that I don't know that we've seen on a collective basis like this. So it's important if you're in HR, you're watching this. The one advice I post on LinkedIn. Big conversation kind of came from that, but one of the questions was, what can we do about it? How do we protect ourselves? And my advice actually was not mine. It was kind of distilled from a lot of the interviews I've been having on redefining HR with chief people officers and CHROs. But the most effective way to kind of support yourself from burnout and this unique emotional stress is to really be very clear about setting boundaries at work and defending those boundaries. And so that feedback came from a range of different CHROs and chief people officers who I've asked about how they practice self-care. And so if they're able to do that effectively, I think it's something that we all need to try to work on to preserve our own well-being during what continues to be a very challenging time for our field. Microsoft has been cranking out some pretty great content lately, and this is a piece that they launched out of their Work Lab platform that was equally strong. It talks a bit about the importance of hybrid onboarding in a hybrid environment, and so it really gets into some tips, some intuitive, some not, but definitely worth your time to give a read, as many of us will remain in this kind of new hybrid model and structure for the near or medium term future. And onboarding is so important, when people are not able to come to an office and you're not able to interact with them in person. Another article from Slate, another data point stacked up on some of the employee sentiments on how they would approach being forced to go back into an office. So No shortage of data points or articles discussing this topic, and here's another one to add to your stack. There's also some interesting data from ADP. They released a report this week on employee sentiments and views around remote, hybrid, co-located. So there's some interesting data in there you may want to also check. And again, I think a lot of the reports, there's tons of articles, as I just mentioned. The reports and having some of that hard data, I think it's important for you to bookmark some of these, because for those of you in HR roles who are working to influence your executive teams around, return to office or remaining hybrid or remote, those articles are great, but that data is better. So, definitely, a nice little influence hack. When you see these reports, bookmark them, save them. They might be great reference points for you to help support some of the conversations and cases that you're making internally around your plans. Jess Hayes at Whereby, I'm a huge fan of her. She was their people lead. Now she's their COO, and she released a kind of framework that they've created around managing and enabling performance in the workplace. So here's a sneak peek. I definitely recommend you check that out. And just really impressed with all of her approach to looking at HR as you look at product. So many different kind of modern thinking and views around all things people and talent. So definitely another one of her articles that's worth your time. There's an interesting piece in the New York Times about some of the conflict internally at Twitter, stemming from an executive that they had brought in a little while ago to bring a bit more urgency to their product roadmap. And, as a user, I've felt that they've been really kind of on point lately in a way that they hadn't been in years regarding products, but it has created some internal tension that this article highlights. So again, just anytime you're going through organizational change, there's an internal cultural component to that, and this article will give you some insights into what's happening at Twitter right now. One of the views I want to flag from Matt Bradburn. Matt is the principal of the People Collective, another innovator in the HR and people space. But we were talking on Twitter about a trend that we're seeing a bit more of, which is companies taking what maybe in the past had been internal intranet type content and putting it external on platforms like Notion. This one is hosted on Notion. But I think it's a really smart way of helping prospective employees get a much deeper feel for the organization, beyond what you carry on the job description, beyond even what you carry on the career site or the About Us. This gets into some real specific components around programs and things like that you'll experience if you're working the organization. So here's theirs for People Collective, but I would definitely take a look at this as a reference point and consider doing something similar, because the more you can pre-seed candidates in terms of knowledge and different aspects of the organizational culture, how work gets done, all of those things that aren't typically included in a job description, the more aligned candidates you can bring in, the more informed candidates can opt in or opt out of your roles. Oh, okay, this is weird seeing my giant face on here, but I did a cover story with HRM Asia, which, for those of you that don't do a lot of work in APAC, it's kind of the equivalent of SHRM for APAC. But I'm really excited to be doing a keynote at their conference in September, and this was a fun cover story. So I get to have an opportunity to talk a bit about redefining HR, the changing landscape for CHROs and CPOs, and really kind of this opportunity for our field to drive real change. So if you're interested in that, you can check out that article in the notes. And lastly, I mentioned this at the beginning when I mentioned the job board. Right now I have, I think, 4 websites, several different brands, sub-brands. I'm in the process of consolidating all of that under the Amplify banner. So here's a little sneak peek. I'll have the new website launching in the next week or two. It's going to be a new platform for the newsletter, the podcast, the book, the accelerator platform, cohorts, my executive search work, everything, one platform. I'm really excited about that. So stay tuned. I'll be dropping more of that. If not next week, the following week. So in the meantime, that's a wrap for today's show. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And if you are hiring HR, recruiting, talent, people, you now have a new resource. So feel free to load your job up there, but just remember, you do need to include your compensation range or it won't be posted. So please do that, and I will see you next week.